You should be able to hear when we actually go live. Okay, let me get Dr. Is it on camera here? Get him sedated.
No, I don't hear anything on my
No, not yet. You won't, because I haven't made the audio live yet.
Hey, Dr. Izzard.
Good morning, Karen.
How you doing?
I'm here.
I am too. That's a good thing. It's always a good thing to be here. So let me know when you want me to open up.
Okay. Dwayne, how you looking over there?
I'm good. Let me know. Ready?
Yes. Let me bring audio in for her and the video itself. You hear now, Karen?
Yeah, I can hear. Let me know when you want me to go live, and I'll hang up the phone.
We got the whole thing working out so right.
3, 2,
and it's just the way we planned it.
We are live, Karen. Go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning. I want to welcome everybody to At the Table. This is Karen Dotson from the Medical College of Wisconsin, and I have along with me one of my favorite doctors. Good morning, Dr. Izzard.
Good morning. Good morning. How you doing, Karen?
I'm doing good. How are you?
All right. So I'm missing my friend here because normally she's sitting here in the studio
I'm
with
sitting
me.
there, but that's okay. I'm right next to you on the screen, so we still good. All right. I see you made it out in that cold.
Yeah, that wind chill.
I know. We Dr. Izzard and I, we always have a good conversation about things that we need to talk about to bring to the community. And we have discussions about that weekly and sometimes daily, just to bring to you some special topics.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we were talking this week, him and I were just saying how we really need to start, talking to the community about what's really going on this time of year. And a lot of people are having colds, viruses, flus. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. I know I got something that seemed like once I try to shake it. Huh?
What's going on with you?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. It's like soon as I get better, then I go somewhere warm and I get sick again.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, this time of year we're seeing it's typically the cold and flu season. Everybody probably knows that. So, typically we're seeing flu, we see RSV. There's another virus, coronavirus, everybody knows about. It's because of one of the big coronaviruses is SARS-CoV-2 or COVID. But flu's actually been pretty bad this year. And I've been seeing a lot of people come in the office with flu symptoms. And unfortunately, it's been people who've been vaccinated. So some of them, again, have been vaccinated and still have gotten the flu. What they do is every year, they try to predict. Everyone probably knows that the vaccine changes every year, because flu is one of these viruses that mutates pretty easily. So every year it mutates a little differently, and that's the reason why you can get the flu every year. You don't become immune to it. But anyway, what they do is they look at the southern hemisphere, because the southern hemisphere has their winter when we have our summer, and vice versa. So they kind of look at what was going around this for our summer, their winter, and those strains they predict are going to be the strains that are going to come up north and affect us. And sometimes they do a good job, and they can predict what's coming, but sometimes they don't. So I'm predicting this year is not going to be a good year for actually predicting it. But that being said, even if you get the flu, it tends to be more mild if you've been vaccinated. So it's not too late to get vaccinated. If you haven't got a flu shot, you can still get one. But also, I would say this. Let me describe what happens when someone has the flu. So usually the flu is this. People will call me and they'll say, Doc, I was fine yesterday, and then around 3:00, I felt like a truck hit me. And so I left work early, or went home. I got in the bed, and I stayed in the bed all day. And this morning, I can barely get out. I just feel like I feel terrible. I got a low-grade fever, body aches. That's the flu. So it's usually not a gradual onset. I've been kind of fighting something off in the last week or so. This is something that usually hits you right away. So if you do have the flu, contact your provider because there is a medication you can take called Tamiflu, oseltamivir, that can help lessen the duration of the flu. But I'm gonna warn you that Tamiflu only reduces the duration by a half day to a day. So the flu normally lasts like 5 to 7 days. So you might go from 5 days to 4.5 days. So it's not a panacea. It's not gonna make you perk right up right away, but it's something you can take. Also, we can use it for people in your household. So if someone in the household has flu, then the other people in the household are at higher risk for getting it, and so you can take that medication to help prevent yourself from getting the flu. But again, talk to your provider about that. Best thing when someone is sick, even this time of year, just in general, avoid touching your face, wash your hands frequently. If you're sick, stay home. That's the other thing. Did we learn anything from COVID? You know, people are still going to
You
work.
should have. I'm telling you. I know I learned.
I know, yeah. At the very least, wear a mask. But better yet, stay home from work if you're, if or school if you're sick, because that's how it spreads.
Yeah. And one thing that was interesting, Dr. Izzy, when we were talking, because I was telling you about a friend of mine that was really coughing a lot for a month. And just, every once in a while they have these coughing spells. And you mentioned something about the whooping cough, and I
Yeah,
haven't heard that in years.
yeah. I haven't seen a case of it's called pertussis, and or whooping cough. I haven't seen a case of pertussis in boy decades. And so I had this patient who said he was. By the time he saw me, he had to cough for like right before Christmas. It'd been for almost a month since he had it. Right after Christmas, he said the week after Christmas, and so he was coughing and coughing. He says it was coughing so hard that his ribs were hurting and it was making him throw up. So I said, "Won't you come in? We can check you for pertussis." Pertussis again, it's whooping cough. Now, when adults get pertussis, they don't get the whoop like kids get. Kids get this characteristic kind of a whooping sound when they get it, and it was one of the leading causes of death. For infants. Back in the day, and one thing that why we don't hear about pertussis anymore is because of vaccinations. Um, and so most kids will get that DTP, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis vaccination, and that covers them. That's why we didn't see it for such a long time. Well, what we've been finding lately is that, or not that long ago, was that uh, normally they get that vaccination starting at age 1. Well, they were finding kids under 1 who were getting pertussis. And they said, well, what's going on? Why are we seeing this thing pop up? And what they found was that it was their grandparents that were spreading it to them. So what happened was that most of the grandparents got vaccinated when they were younger, when they were kids, and by the time they get to their 50s, 60s, the immunity had worn off, and so now they get this cold, and not thinking, of course, that it's whooping cough, and they spread it to their infant grandchild, and so they're recommending anybody who is older, grandparent age or older, who's taking care of a young child under 1, that you get a booster vaccination for pertussis. So when you get your tetanus shot now, often it's a combination. They call it Tdap. So it's tetanus, but it also has diphtheria and pertussis in there, and you can get that when you get your tetanus booster shot, and that'll cover you again. So that'll boost your immunity. But yeah, that's where we're seeing that. So pertussis is it's if you get a really really bad cough, you probably should get checked out. Again, it's not a common thing that we have been seeing, but it's making a rise again.
Wow. And that's something that I think a lot of us have been challenged with. I'm seeing that someone said that they had COVID and pneumonia last month. So, that's kind of interesting that you can have more than one thing going on with you, Doctor. So
Yeah, it's rare that you have more than one, but you can get more than one. Other thing that happen too is that you can get one, and then later on in the season, like you can get influenza A. There's two types, A and B. You can get influenza. We've seen this. People get influenza A earlier in the season, and then later on they come back and they get influenza B. So you can get more than one type of flu, or you can get the flu and later you can get COVID. And so, you got to be careful with those things. Again, best thing is make sure that, just have good habits as far as washing your hands and avoid touching your face and stay away from sick people.
So that's one thing that we have to be very conscious of as we kind of move through this flu cold season. And there's some things that you had mentioned that you've been checking out about research and you want to share with the community. And it was kind of interesting, some of the things that you were talking about.
Let me say this. I can say this because I don't work for the college. So she connected me to give me that elbow, but she can't. Because one of the reasons I'm doing this this program is because I care about our community, but I believe in this idea that we need to be included in these research projects out there. And so right now in Washington, a certain person is telling agencies that they should not be reporting things. So the information, like on the CDC website, a lot of it has disappeared. Anything especially related to DEI and is disappearing. So anything that is considered woke. So I hope that all this time that we've been coming to you in the morning, and it's first and third Fridays, I hope that we made the point that it's important for us to really know this information and to be involved. It's not just because there was a grant or something like that. This is because it really behooves us to be at the table. And if you're at the table, you're on the menu. Exactly. And so we take for granted that these things are going to be there. Well, they might not be there. So things change. Politics change, funding change. So take this thing seriously. And if you do care, about us being involved in these things as researchers and as subjects, that you make that known to your representatives, because again, there's no guarantee that this thing is going to continue with this new administration.
I agree, and that's one important thing that you should let your legislatures and the people that you vote for, the importance of what you believe in. And so we want to make sure that we just empower you with information. And as far as what we're looking at with the Medical College of Wisconsin, we're still looking at the importance of being involved in the community and doing the work that we do. And so, I just want to encourage people to, we do have a voice, and we need to let people know the importance of, being involved. And also how important research really is, especially for our community. So, Dr. Izzard, you mentioned about certain research that you wanted to share with us today.
I want people to make the connection between the research we talk about and outcomes, and that's always a hard thing, because you go in, again, I'm not supposed to talk about the program, but I
don't think you're not really supposed to talk about the program. I think right now what's happening is that the federal government, until the new administration gets in there, they just want to make sure that what's being said, they understand and know. So I think it's just a transition right now. So basically, our program is still strong and it's still moving forward. And I think we want to make sure people realize that we know that we just received an email back from people that they can log in. So those are things that we know that can happen. But research, it's not just our program that's involved with research, it's across the country. We have a researcher's workbench that can access this data. And that's some of the things that Dr. Izzard, you were talking about, as far as like what information is out there that's going to be helpful for people like you, Dr. Izzard, to help your patients.
Yeah. So one thing that came out, these are some of the highlights from 2024. So from last year, from the NIH, that's the National Institutes of Health. That's a big agency that does most of the, at least funds most of the major research in the country. And that's not just done in DC, but mostly it's out in the, across the country at different universities and colleges that do this. But anyway, so this is an interesting one. Preventing and treating peanut butter allergy. Now, a lot of people out there who have kids with peanut butter allergies, and it's going to be a big thing because you got some kids that are so allergic you can't even bring peanut butter into the classroom. So they can't.
Wow.
If they just smell a peanut butter sandwich, they have an anaphylactic reaction, so they get hives and their airway might close up, and yeah. So it used to be that kids on their birthday or whatever holidays, special days would bring a treat. Yeah, they can't bring anything with nuts to classes anymore just because of that risk. But this study it says food allergies can be dangerous or even fatal. Millions of people in the U.S. live with a peanut allergy, which often develops in childhood. A long-term study found that children who regularly ate peanut-containing foods, beginning as early as 4 to 6 months of age, had a greatly reduced risk of developing peanut allergy into adolescence. For kids who already have a food allergy, a drug used to treat allergic asthma reduced the risk of reactions to peanuts and other common foods. So, if you're one of these, families that they have allergies, and particularly food allergies like peanuts, that's something you might want to check with talk to your doctor about, because it looks like, at least in this study, that kids who were exposed to peanuts earlier actually were less likely later on to develop a peanut allergy.
So
So
what are you saying, Dr. Izzard? Are you saying that when they're before 1 year old or after 1 year
yeah,
old, you might want to introduce them to peanut butter?
right. So again, these are initial studies. So don't act on this without talking to somebody. But so they need to what happens when something like this comes out is that the medical community will look at it. Um, they will kind of talk about whether this information sounds like it's useful information, to sound right. They'll try to reproduce it, and then they might do further studies looking at, okay, let's look at kids who again, they do another study looking at kids who have had peanuts before the age of 1, and how many of them develop peanut allergies later. So just don't act on this. But it is interesting, information that's coming out of this, some of this research is looking at whether we can change the severity of either the severity or who has peanut allergies based on when they're exposed to it. Yeah, so this kind of goes counter to what you think. So a lot of times we think, oh, if you're exposed to something, maybe that makes you allergic to it. But I think we're finding a lot of times it's early exposure that actually helps your immune system to realize that, oh, this is normal. One of the theories of that, the reason why we're seeing a lot more allergies is because back in the day, you used to play in the dirt and you get dirt in your mouth and eat it, on your hands or whatever, small amounts, not eat mud pies, hopefully, but that exposure to a lot of different allergens, a lot of different things, makes your immune system not freak out later on when you see it. And so they think that living in a super clean environments where you don't get these other things into your system and you're not exposed to it, later on when you are exposed to it, you have a hypersensitive reaction to it. So yeah, so these super clean environments actually may be doing us more harm than good. And so
Isn't that interesting? Because people, when
little
they
dirt
have
not
their
bad.
newborns, they always want to, sterilize everything right away to make sure everything is nice and clean for the baby, right?
Right. So again, I'm not telling them don't feed your kids dirt, but little dirt, as we just say, dirt don't hurt.
All right. What other ones do you have, Dr. Izzard?
Okay. I'll say this one about the accurate blood test for Alzheimer's disease. I'm gonna say that for a little later because we got a guest
Yeah, we
coming
have a special guest. And,
Yeah.
I wanted to also just kind of break in right quick and just mention to people that we do have 2 special guests with us a little bit later today. We have Diane Milner, who is with the Alzheimer's Association of Wisconsin. And then also we have Colleen McCarthy. She is the VP of Diversity, Organ, and Tissue Donation. And so I just wanted to let people know that we have some other conversations going on throughout today too. And also, Dr. Izzard will be talking about, he'll be making a special presentation in the community next week. And so some people might want to come out and see him as well. But we'll talk more about this. I always like to give people stay tuned. And right now we're getting ready to take a break. We want to encourage you to call in. If you have questions, you can call us at 414-444-5253 or 414-444-5250. This is Karen Dotson, and we are at the table, and we look forward to joining you back on the other side.
The passing of a loved one is emotional enough without adding the stress of funeral arrangements. By pre-planning, you receive the desires of your heart while taking away the burden from your family. It also saves you money, providing the dignity and respect your memory deserves. And there are times when life ends unexpectedly. Please know that the New Pitts Mortuary is here to lend a helping, caring hand anytime, day or night. We are the New Pitts.
I want to welcome everybody back. This is Karen Dotson from the Medical College of Wisconsin, and we have along with me Dr. Kevin Izzard, who is a family practice physician. And it's always a joy when we can bring information to you. Our dear Dr. Kevin Izzard is always doing his research to bring good information to you about research.
Gotta keep up. Hey, we have a caller on the line.
All right, caller, you're at the table. Thank you for calling in.
Good morning to the host first and foremost.
Good morning.
Show. And I'm going to start out by Dr. Izzard to figure out who this is when I start out this way. I first want to say Happy New Year and I love you.
I know this is.
Amen. Amen.
It's my stalker.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. Amen. I get a flu shot every year. I got a question, Dr. Izzard.
Yeah.
Is it necessary to get like a shingle shot every year?
No, it's not. shingles. Let me take the audience a little bit about shingles. So, shingles is caused by the varicella zoster virus. Okay, so it's a virus that causes chickenpox. Same virus. So everybody who's had shingles had chickenpox at one time, and most of us had it. In fact, I remember when I was a kid, my cousin got chickenpox. My mother took us over there so we all could get it. That's how we got vaccinated.
Get it out the way, right?
Get sick at one time, and that way you have to deal with it later on. So and for the most part, chicken pox is just kind of annoying, so you back to the scratch, you itch for a while, maybe you get some scabs, you pick them off. But in the worst case scenario, that virus can spread to your brain and they can get a meningitis. It can be deadly. So people can, kids can die from chicken pox. So, but you just not that severe. Well, anyway, now they have a vaccine. So when I was teaching residents over the medical college, boy, a lot of them had never even seen chicken pox because, the last 20 years now it's almost gone because, most kids now have been vaccinated against it. Well, anyway, what happens when you have chicken pox, your immune system fights it. And so, but the thing is, it never completely gets rid of it. So it suppresses it. And so there's usually some virus left and it kind of hides in your nerve roots. So, kind of place in your spine where your nerves come out from your spine. So the virus kind of hides down in there. And if for some reason it starts to activate again, your immune system says, oh, I know this. And so it fights it. And so it keeps it suppressed. Well, what happens with shingles is that for some people, for some reason, we're not quite sure why it is. It may be stress. It may be someone suppressing your immune system. It may be like a major surgery or just getting older. But for whatever reason, your immune system lets that virus get loose. And so that when that virus gets loose, guess what? It follows the nerve root that's been hiding in. And so that's why when someone gets shingles, it's usually like a band of virus. It's if you look at you can see it's always on one side and like a band that kind of goes around and it's going where that nerve goes. And that's why it's so painful too, because it's irritating the nerve. And you can get this condition called post-herpetic neuralgia, where that nerve is damaged, permanently damaged. And so you can have lifelong real hypersensitivity or pain in that nerve because that virus been activated again and injuring that nerve. So what the shingles vaccine does is it actually it boosts your immune system again. So now you've your immune system says, okay, now I'm healthy again. I know what this is. You're making sufficient you're making sufficient antibodies to prevent the virus from becoming active again. So now the question is, how often do you need to get a vaccine, the booster again? So usually we say, probably 10 years, but there's a newer one that came out. There's an older vaccine that wasn't very effective. It was like 50% effective, and it lasted about 5 years. Okay. This newer one that came out about 5 years ago now, Shingrix, is actually a lot more effective than the older vaccine. So again, by being new, we're not exactly sure if it's going to be 20 years, it's going to be 10 years, how long it's going to be before you need a booster again. But it's like over 90% effective at preventing shingles. The cost is this. So because it's so much better on your immune system, people are much more likely when they get the vaccine to have a reaction to it. So they're more likely to get body aches or low-grade fever. In fact, 15% of people was bad enough that they missed work the next day from side effects from the vaccination. Kind of like people got with COVID when they got the COVID vaccine. Some people did fine. Some people, were, got the low-grade fever and fatigue and that stuff. But it's short-lived. It's only, a day or two. So if you're, particularly if you're older, you should consider getting that vaccine. I
got it last year.
Yeah.
And that's why I was asking. I wanted to need something to do every year. So I did get the Shingrix last year. Matter of fact, the first dose, and then the second one 6 months later.
Right. Yeah. So it's 2 doses. Yeah. I want to point that out too. And there's no correlation between, like, some people have reaction to the vaccine. There's no correlation between if you get sick with the first one that you're gonna get sick with the second one. So some people did fine with the first one. had problems with the second one. Some people had problems with the first one, did fine with the second one. Some had problems with both, and some had problems with neither one of them. So, it's kind of,
So, Dr. Izzard, what happens when
chances.
somebody? What happens, Dr. Izzard, when somebody just wants to? They just take one, like if they had a bad reaction for the first one, and they said, "I'm not going in for the second one."
Right. So what they found was that I remember the number correct. It was something like with the first vaccination, you got like 78% immunity. Okay, and then it went up to over 90% if you got the second one. So yeah, you can do one shot. You only have partial immunity from it, but you could do one if you really had a bad reaction. But again, there's no correlation between that first and second shot. You can have a really bad reaction to that first one and do fine with the second one.
Okay, I didn't hear any bad reaction at all. Thank God for that. But
Thank God,
worked out pretty good. So y'all just kind of curious if we need to do it every year because I do get the flu shot every year.
Yeah. So it is interesting how some vaccinations you need them every year. Like for the flu, the flu changes, mutates a lot. So so COVID, another one that kind of it mutates. I think the difference between the initial vaccinations we got for COVID and the ones they're doing now, they're trying to make it more specific for the variants, but the COVID hasn't changed as much as like the flu does. What really has major changes every year. Some vaccinations, boost your immune system, but they wear off over time. Like the tetanus shot. It's good for about 7 to 10 years. So after that, you need to need a booster shot, and then some are good for life, like the the chickenpox shot. The varicella. That one is it's a one-time thing. Now again, these are newer vaccines, and so it may be that we'll find that, like we found with pertussis, that you get vaccinated and then maybe you might need to get another booster shot, when in 20, 30 years later. But yeah, so please there's a whole lot of people that that are really concerned about vaccines. Vaccines have changed the world, man. We don't see anybody with polio. But if you grew up in the 50s in the U.S., everybody knew a kid, in the neighborhood who got polio, or maybe someone in their family got polio. But we don't see that stuff anymore because we got vaccinations. And for those who are wondering, there is, and there's something they look at with research. There is no connection between, and I tell you, they're really looking at. There's no connection between autism and vaccine. So. Please get your kids vaccinated.
Yeah, because I think Dr. Izzard, you mentioned that, but we are going to have.
Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sitting at the table with us. I just wanted to mention, Dr. Izzard, you mentioned that down the road we will be having someone to kind of talk a little bit more about autism as well. So that's one good thing that we're looking out for. If people are interested in talking to our doctor today, you can call at 414-444-5253 or 414-444-5250. Dr. Izzard, what other research have you been looking at?
Yeah, I got one here. This is another one from October 2024. People who fit most of their exercise into 1 or 2 days a week had the same reduced risk of disease as people who spread their activity throughout the week. The findings suggest that people may not need to spread physical activities throughout the week to gain health benefits from them.
Wow.
Can we always recommend that people,
That's significant.
doing a half-hour exercise every day, at least 5 days a week? What they found, what this study showed, was that people who just, because some people they don't have time to be exercising, and so they might exercise just in the weekends. So what they found was that let's see. This is a study done by Sean Kushad at the Massachusetts Institute. I'm sorry, the Massachusetts General Hospital, and he looked at UK biobanks. They looked at kind of like what I'm guessing the UK biobank is similar to what we have with all of us. So they looked at the information in that biobank, and they looked at more than 500,000 people, adults, over 2 decades, and looked at specifically for people between the ages of 40 to 69. And what they found was that people who did 150 minutes of exercise per week, and whether that was spread out over 7 days or over 2 days, and what they found was that their health outcomes were similar. So, for those who don't have time to exercise every day, because of work or because of taking care of kids, but you got time to do it on the weekends, there is benefit, from doing it on those weekend days like that. So, this is interesting, in that regard, that you don't have to do this every day.
It really is. I think it's discouraging when you think, oh, I got to exercise so much every day, so then you just don't do it. But if you have 1 or 2 days to do it, that's more doable for a lot of people, especially if you're busy. Looks
Yeah.
like we might have another caller on the line. Dr. Izzard, do we have another caller on the line?
Yep.
Good morning,
Hello,
caller.
folks. This is Rick calling you long distance from Germany.
Oh, Rick from Germany. Good morning.
Good morning, ladies.
Morning for you. What time is it there?
It's about 25 till 3.
Okay. Good afternoon then.
It's the afternoon for me. Yeah. My question is to you about the chickenpox vaccine.
Yes.
You said chickenpox, if you get it, it can lodge in your nervous system.
Right.
Could you expand on that a little more?
Yeah.
And second of all, is there a vaccine for chickenpox, and how long does it last?
Yes. So, most kids now by the age of 12 are getting vaccinated for chickenpox. And so we don't see chickenpox too much anymore because it's rare because most kids have been vaccinated against it. Another interesting thing about this chickenpox virus, the varicella zoster virus, is that if you have shingles and you come in contact with someone who hasn't had chickenpox, guess what? They won't get shingles from you. They'll get chickenpox from you. So that's how we know it's the same virus. And so it's just a matter of like when you got it. If it's a recurrence, it's zoster. If it's if it's a recurrence, it's shingles. If it's the initial infection, we call it chickenpox or varicella. But it's it's the same virus. It hides on the nerve roots. It's not, when it's hiding out there, it's not doing anything. So it may, you can have this thing for 40, 50 years, longer sometimes, and it just sits there. It doesn't do anything. So, and that's a testament to your immune system. That's why you should keep your immune system healthy. And like I said, when it comes active again, it follows that nerve, and that nerve gets irritated, and you can get, hopefully, if you do get a problem, it's a temporary issue with the nerve being damaged, and it causes nerve pain, but it can be a lifelong thing. People who develop that post-herpetic neuralgia are, they're the ones that wish that they had gotten the vaccine, the shingles vaccine, because it can be painful. It can really be debilitating for some people.
So I've seen it before. Doesn't it also cause like sores and things like that?
Yeah. So when it comes out, it's like how when you get chickenpox, you get these little blisters and scabs that kind of pop up over your body. It's like having all that concentrated in one area. Okay, and so we describe it in the classic description of it is dewdrop on a rose petal. And these descriptive things in medical textbooks. So that meaning that is your skin is red, and the dewdrop is a blister. So you get these blisters that form on your skin, and that's usually the indication right there that, okay, this is shingles, because you look at someone and you'll see a band of redness with blisters on it. So that's how you know it's shingles. So we tell people, if you got that, again, stay away from people who are susceptible to chickenpox. Now, most people have had chickenpox, so it's not as bad as it used to be, because most people are vaccinated or at least have immunity to it. But you really should stay home from work if you have that, because you can spread that to other people. And if someone who is not immune to chickenpox, they would get chickenpox from you, and not shingles.
Okay.
It is it's an interesting infection. It really is.
Okay.
And as long as you have, and you just really isolate yourself, as long as you still have the blisters, because that's where all the blisters, that fluid in the blisters is where all the virus is.
Mm.
So that's why you got to wash your hands and keep it covered up. And it usually goes away in a week or week to 10 days. But yeah, we don't see too much chicken pox anymore.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you,
We
caller.
don't see eagles anymore either.
So thank you, caller, for sitting at the table with us
Thank you,
today.
Rick. Avita saying.
All right.
So let's see. I got another study here.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. I know you have a list there for
Yeah, I
us.
got a list of things. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff coming out. That that's useful data. And so that's the thing about medicine is that it always changes. So stuff that we were convinced that we were sure about, and and then you find out, 20 years later, oh, that's not true. We thought it was true, but it's not true, or not quite true, or stuff changes, or new medications come out, or new standards come out. So things are always changing. This one here is really this one is really troubling. I don't know. Did we talk about this last week or last time? Microplastics. Have you heard about that, Karen?
No, you didn't talk about that.
Oh, this is a new one. This isn't really a study. This is something. Well, it is a study, but this wasn't an NIH study. But this is new information about microplastics. So, or nanoplastic is the other thing that is referred to. So how there's all this concern about whales and dolphins and stuff getting caught with, and the other sea animals getting caught with plastic. Especially these you don't see these tabs anymore like they used to have. Where you have bottles with these tabs because animals get their head in there and they get stuck. And so, but anyway, so these plastics now are affecting human beings. What they found, this was in Japan, I believe. They actually were able to find these microplastics. So plastics the size of 1 nanometer, which is like a red blood cell is 7 micrometers. So so this is like about smaller than a blood cell. That up to actually up to fairly big enough to see with your eye. But they found this stuff is in people, and it's getting deposited in your organs, like your kidneys and your liver.
And how is that happening? Is it something that we're taking in, or?
Yeah, and that's the big question. So where's it coming from? And I think that it's from just using. I mean, think about it. We got plastics and everything. We're drinking bottled water. There's probably small amounts of plastic that comes out in that. The food containers, everything has plastic now. So yeah, that's and the other thing too is they're able to see it, but they haven't determined is it dangerous and what effect it's going to have on people. So this was a small study looking at 36 individuals, and they found these little microfibers enlarged in people's blood vessels and their organs. So it's kind of scary, that
It really is. I mean, I've read about that in the past too. I read about that in the past too, Dr. Izzard, where the body has a way of accumulating some of that material from the bottles that we drink and things like that. And so you always got to be a little bit more conscious. Like I know they say that you shouldn't leave your bottled water out in the sun.
Yeah. When it's warmer, it's more likely to release those particles. So be careful if you're microwaving plastic, because that heated up makes it worse.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a concerning thing. So being on the lookout for that, and there will definitely be more studies on on this. Maybe this might contribute to heart disease. Again, if these things are lodging in your your veins and arteries, is that going to cause a buildup of cholesterol or other things, causing heart disease? I
wonder, are we going to have to go back to the glass bottles?
Right.
Recyclables. And then you remember how they used to years ago? We had the glass bottles, and you can go and turn in your bottles and get your nickel or your penny or whatever it was.
Yeah. So that's something to be. More research is being done on that. Those are the kind of things. Again, if you went in a research study, they might look at your plastic use and and other illnesses you might develop over the years. Does it affect the immune system? We don't know this, and so that's why we got to do more studies. But interesting study, kind of concerning. Here's one here. Early life sugar intake affects chronic disease risk. So low sugar exposure in utero and in the first 2 years of life was associated with lower risk for diabetes and high blood pressure. The findings suggest that restricting sugar intake during this crucial period could have lifelong health benefits. This is an interesting study because this was a little different. So what they did with this study here, and this is another NIH-funded study that came out in November of 2024. Dr. Tadeja Gracer at the University of Southern California did a retrospective study. So she looked at people that restricted sugar. It's hard to get people to restrict sugar. So what she did was she looked at records from World War II. And during World War II, there was rationing of sugar. So people were rationed to less than 40 grams of sugar a day for an adult and less than 15 grams for children. Okay, which is kind of in line with what they recommend anyway for the daily intake to be. And what they found was after the war, after sugar became more available, people ate more sugar. Well, anyway, what they did was they went back and they looked at people who were born during that period where they were restricting sugar, where the sugar was being rationed, and look at their health outcomes versus the people that were born a few years later where sugar was readily available and people ate more sugar. And what they found was that people during that period when sugar was restricted had less incidence of diabetes, and if they did, it came out it developed 15 years later than people who had free access to sugar, and other health outcomes were better in people that were who were born during that restricted sugar period. Not only people who were alive and kids at that time, but even the babies that were in utero. So mothers who had restricted sugar, their kids had lower outcomes of diabetes and health related issues. So interesting. So sugar is something that affects your health as we all know about. But there's some evidence that at least historically that people that had lower amounts of exposure to sugar, even in utero, had better outcomes.
Dr. Izzard, I'm just looking at a comment that a person online has asked, and so we should definitely acknowledge this question. She says, or he, they say, what are your thoughts about RFK Jr. being confirmed as the HHS secretary? This unqualified person is on record as saying blacks should get vaccinated rather than white people. So that is the question that this person has on the website. And so I think that I can say for the medical college, I know they're looking at everything very closely, and they're just keeping us abrupt as far as next steps that we need to consider doing.
It's very concerning. Again, I try not to dwell too much on the politics of the situation, but it's concerning when someone at that level who's anti-vaccination, and not only that, I mean, he just has some bizarre philosophies and some of the things. Again, I'm not gonna say everything's bad. I mean, he tries to promote healthy eating, and I think that's a good thing. Eating stuff that's less processed and whole foods, vegetables, fruits, vegetables. That stuff's that's good for you. I'm all for that. I don't think that we should be eating dead bears.
Okay, I haven't heard that one.
Oh yeah, that was a big story. So
okay, I haven't heard about that one. But on that note, Dr. Izzard, we're gonna have to take a break.
They found the bear in Central Park, and everybody's wondering how did the bear get into Central Park? Well, later on, he confirmed the story. He was going to a meeting. He was driving along upstate New York. There was a dead bear, roadkill.
Oh wow!
He found the road. He's going to take it home and eat it.
Okay, well, we are going to comment on that this
I
morning.
know, right?
We're gonna ask people if you have any questions or you want to talk to us
No,
this morning.
that's the story, Karen. So he was driving along. He said, "Oh, man, I got a meeting. I got this beer in my trunk. I can't." So he decided, well, I can't keep it because I don't want to go turn bad while I'm sitting in this meeting. So he threw the bear in the park.
Are you serious?
Yep. Am
Okay.
I lying, Jermaine?
Oh, literally. Okay.
And he
Well,
told the story. So it wasn't like someone made it up. He told the story. That's what. Yeah.
okay. Well, on that note, we're gonna take a quick break and come back on the other side to have more discussion at the table today. We're going to have our special guest that will be joining us shortly. Dr. Kevin Izzard is joining us right now, but we're going to have Diane Milner, Director of Alzheimer's Association. She's one of the directors at the Alzheimer's Association, and then also Colleen McCarthy, who is the VP of Versity, Organ and Tissue Donation. And we're going to see you on the other side. So we're going to have some great conversation. We thank Dr. Izzard for just giving us some highlights about research that's really going on and things that we need to think about and consider. We'll see you back shortly. want to
All
welcome
right, we are
everybody
back.
back. This is Karen Dotson from the Medical College of Wisconsin. I'm a program director there, and I have Dr. Kevin Izzard, who is a family practice doctor, with me as well. And we have been having some great conversation about research and also, some of the challenges that people have had as far as with their health and certain situations that are going on. And we have a special guest with us today, Dr. Kevin Izzard. And I wanted to welcome Diane Milner with us today. Good morning, Diane. How are you?
Good morning, Miss Dotson. Good to see you on the screen. I wish.
I know it's good to see you as well. Diane, I know that you were on the show yesterday.
Yes.
You were on Keith's show, so you try to get it in.
We got
This lady has a mission and she's on driven mode. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I love it. But you really have been involved with Alzheimer's in the early 20s, based on some of the challenges that you had with your mother suffering from this disease as well. And you kind of used what you have learned to really do what you do now, in a sense. Am I correct on that, Diane?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it was a very difficult walk as a caregiver back in the early 2000s, and I don't want anybody to have to go through that alone. There's help out there. There's assistance. There's all kinds of resources, and I just want to be that vehicle that brings the resources to the community.
And speaking of that, resources to the community, there's something going on next week that I think we're going to have one of my favorite doctors going to be on too.
Absolutely.
Put the plug in, Diane.
Yes. Thank you so much for that lead in. The Alzheimer's Association, we are a volunteer-led organization, and I have a team of volunteers called the Health Equity Coalition, and they are some dynamic people from within the community. And they are doing this year a Black History program, this is the third year that we've done it, at St. Mark AME Church. It's called Creating Connections. Hope is blossoming through access to care and support.
Diane, where is St. Mark's located?
St. Mark is on 16th and Atkinson, 1616 West Atkinson.
And you're going to have this event, and it's going to be from what time? And tell us a little bit about what to expect, because I know you got a lot going on with this event. Not only some good food that you mentioned, so give us an update on it.
Absolutely, there is good food. So St. Mark has graciously hosted this for 3 years in a row, and it is a platform that works for us. It's a 2-hour event. County Exec David Crawley is our keynote speaker, and then we will hear from the medical arm, which is going to be our wonderful Dr. Kevin Izzard. Here.
Yes, our favorite doctor.
Yes, absolutely. And we definitely want to hear from the medical piece, because people are suffering in our community and they don't know that this is not a normal sign of aging. This is actually a disease. Mm-hmm. And so Dr. Izzard can talk to them and let them know that Black Americans are hit 2 times harder than their white counterparts with this disease. Yeah. So he will be talking to them from that perspective. And after Dr. Izzard, we'll hear from someone from our advocacy team, because right alongside the medical piece, you need to fight for your rights. So we will take people in March to the state capitol for Alzheimer's Day at the state capitol. That bus will leave from St. Mark's AME Church, and on our Black History program, we will have a live sign up for Advocacy Day. So you'll be able to step to the table, sign up, and get paired with the legislator from your zip code and be able to go to Advocacy Day in March, and it's all free. So the day, February 11th, next week, 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., come and enjoy. You'll hear from the county executive. You'll hear from Dr. Izzard. You'll hear from our policy coordinator, and you'll also get a great soul food meal, fried chicken like you have never had before. So
the other thing, Diane, it's all free, and that's one good thing. But the other good thing is that this is giving an outlet for people that have challenges, working with family members and loved ones with this.
Hmm.
Give us an idea of some of the supportive things that you are able to offer.
So, support in terms of education, classes on how to be a healthy caregiver. So making sure that you understand that caregiving is it's a hard job. It's one of the hardest things that you'll ever do, at least from my perspective, it was. And making sure that you understand that self-care is care. So looking at it from that perspective. Also, we have support groups. So every once in a while you need to talk with like-minded people who are doing the same thing that you're doing, and they understand the trials and the stressors that you're under. Sometimes you're working a full-time job and caring for somebody. So
Right.
you need to be able to share that with someone. We do have some support groups that are out in the community, some that are in person, some that are virtual.
Yeah.
So being able to access the education, being able to access the support groups. We also have a 24-hour helpline that is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never ever closes, and it's in 200 different languages. So that helpline is something that if you're up at 3 in the morning because your loved one can't sleep or won't sleep,
Hmm.
then you can call that helpline and talk to them. And sometimes you can even put your loved one on the phone,
Hmm.
and that might just kind of jolt them back into okay, I guess I should go to sleep. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
so those kinds of stressors, but all of that is available, and people don't know it and they don't access it, and we need to make sure that they're accessing the resources.
What Diane is saying is that Alzheimer's has multiple victims. It's not just the person with with the dementia.
Yeah.
It's the caregivers. And there's a lot of research looking at the stress that that someone with dementia has on the household. And
Absolutely.
a lot of these it tends to be the highest group that's taking care of these people are daughters.
Yes.
And so a lot of these daughters are at the age of taking care of their kids too. So they're called a sandwich generation. They're kind of in between taking care of a parent and taking care of their kids at the same time.
Absolutely, Dr. Izzard. I
Mm.
was that sandwich generation. My
Yeah.
son was 3 when I was caring for my mother,
Mm.
who was 80-something
Wow.
with
Yeah.
disease.
Yeah.
So it is a very big stressor, and it reverberates throughout the family because everybody has input on the person who's living with the person with the disease, and all the family members all over the country are telling them what to do and what not
Hmm.
to do and what works and doesn't work, but they're not there. So they one of our playwrights who wrote a play for the Alzheimer's Association, he coined it very well when he said, "Mama could take care of 8 of us, and 8 of us can't take care of one mama." So
Yep.
Wow. Dr. Izzard, Alzheimer's disease really affects people in all different types of ages
Hmm.
and different capacities. Can you just give a brief description of that for
You know
us?
what? Look, tell me. Remember I said I had one study. I was holding off till Diane got here. Let me talk about this study because it's that interesting. From the Rand Foundation, and this was from earlier from uh, end of 2024. So they looked at dementia, and what they found was that there were 11 strong predictors that they looked at people at age 60. And they said, and they followed these people over a period of time, and they tried to find out who was developing dementia later on. And there were 11 predictors at age 60 that predicted, your risk of developing dementia. Now, I should probably clarify for people: dementia is the bigger term. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. It's the most, by far, the most common type of dementia. But there are other types of dementia. There's multi-infarct dementia. There's Lewy body dementia. So there's a bunch of other different ones that can cause dementia. Alzheimer's being the biggest one. But they all have in common is that it's affecting the functioning of brain. They all tend to happen in people as they get older. But anyway, this study looked at who developed dementia and trying to predict from age 60. What they found was that there were 11 things that closely correlated with developing dementia at age from 60 on. Having poor physical health was one. Experiencing a stroke, that's probably not surprising. Having a particular gene that strongly predicts the future risk of developing cognitive impairment and dementia. That's EPO-E gene, that's going to be another thing that's going to be as we go along. We'll probably be doing a lot more screening for that as we know more of the connection between that and dementia. Having never worked or worked for only a few years is a risk factor. Not having private insurance plan at age 60 was a predictor for developing dementia. Having diabetes or a body mass index of 35 or more at age 60. Uh, this is another one interesting. Never drinking alcohol or drinking excessively. So never drinking alcohol was surprisingly was a risk factor for developing dementia.
Never drinking alcohol? That's interesting.
I know that is interesting. Never exercising. Scoring low on various physical tests such as grip strength, walking speed, and balance, etc. Being less conscientious, and then having low engagement in hobbies. This is a big one. Having low engagement in hobbies and activities that involve learning new things. So if your brain was idle, you weren't doing things, and that's why we talk about these things like doing puzzles and things, or being socially engaged with other people. Those things keep your brain active, and you're less likely to develop diabetes. I'm sorry, to develop dementia if you're doing those things. Another interesting thing I found from this study was that people who were born in the South had a higher incidence of dementia.
Wow.
And yeah, I don't know what the reason is. I don't think they know the reason either. The other one that I thought was interesting is while Black, Hispanic, and lower income individuals showed a higher risk, race and ethnicity were not independent risk factors once education and income were considered. So we are twice as likely to develop dementia, but if you look at people at their education level, so this is like another a confounding factor. So because African Americans are less likely to have a higher education level, they were more likely to develop dementia. So when you account for people that are educated and who are again going back to using your brain, they were that factor no longer was an issue. So,
Dr. Iser, so when you say using your brain, because I think a lot of times people think, oh, I'm watching a television program, I'm using my brain, right? That's not the case, right? Explain, because I'm just kind of curious because, I just know that it really takes your brain needs to start working and figuring things out and, kind of going through a process. So let's speak about that.
Well, what happens is, and if you think about it, your brain is everything, all the processing is going on in your brain, and you have all these connections. You got billions of connections in your brain between neurons. After you get older, things become more set. When you're young, it's what they call your brain's plastic, meaning that it's able to make new connections. And as you get older, you get set in those ways. When you use your brain doing new things, your brain is more elastic, more plastic. It can pick up things. So if you do have a neuron, for instance, that is damaged, then your brain's able to find new routes to reroute things. And so when you use your brain, you're keeping your brain elastic. So it can pick up for little things that might damage it. As opposed to if you let your brain sit and you don't do anything more with it, well, now all those connections are static. They are what they are, and if you lose one, it's like going down. If you only got one road going down, you got Capitol Drive, and that's the only street you got. If there's a blockage on that street, well, everything gets blocked up. But if you got side streets you can go around, well, then you can get around any kind of blockage that happens. So it's the same thing with your brain. So keep your brain, especially, if you're getting older, keep doing things, stay engaged. That's a big one, talking to people, having hobbies, talking about different things. Even if you're going to watch TV, watch educational programs. Things are going to make you think. Things are going to make you process things.
And that's kind of key because, we all look forward to retirement. And sometimes retirement is not the best thing.
No.
What I'm hearing, because a lot of times people say, I'm just going to retire and do nothing. And that nothing it doesn't work for us as well.
That is very true. I see a lot of people, they retire and they get old.
Yeah. It's kind of sad.
Getting up in the morning, any place to be, and you just get lazy.
So Diane, when we're talking about, Alzheimer's and your organization and all the work that you've been doing, what is it that you really want people to know? Like, I know you always mention about the resources and, and that you're there for them. You're there for them to give them that support. You have special events periodically throughout the year to give some relief to some of the caregivers. Just kind of walk us through some of the things that you're doing, because I want to make sure that people know about next Tuesday again as well.
Sure enough, sure enough. So yes, we do. We offer events and education and support, and we also offer the latest research. So that's where the majority of our dollars that we get in are put into research and helping others become educated about um, this disease and how it affects our community and the world. Basically, it's a devastating disease. It's an insidious disease,
Mhm.
and we want people to know that there are things that can be done. We talk about this as an era of treatment. So for the first time in 40 or 50 years, we finally have a drug that is able to actually treat the disease and not just the symptoms of the disease. So the drugs that were before often treated, like with my mother, she had Aricept, and it treats the behaviors, it treats the symptoms, but it didn't arrest the disease. Now we have treatments that are getting better and better, and they're able to actually treat the disease. We are also coming forth with new information so that at some point we'll be at a point where we can actually use a blood test and use a blood biomarker to actually determine if you have the disease,
Mhm.
just like with high cholesterol and different things like that. So we're really making a lot of medical advancements, and it behooves us to let the community know, especially communities that are more disadvantaged, that don't really access the information, or don't have access to the information like others do.
Yeah.
I
So,
wanted, yeah, I
mhm.
wanted to ask Diane. I wanted to ask you, along with Dr. Izzard, when you said treat the disease. That's really key words there. Treat the disease. So, does it heal the person? Does it just slow down the progress? The progression of it. When you say treat the disease, what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, basically, I don't know if Dr. Izzard
Mhm.
wants to talk about it first because
Yeah.
he can speak from a
Yeah.
medical perspective.
Well, I can tell you, the first obstacle that we have is that people aren't being screened for it. This is, we come in, you take your blood pressure, we get your weight, we're screening for a lot of those things. We don't routinely screen people's memory.
That's right.
And a lot of times it's very insidious in the beginning. People are forgetting little things, or, I had a patient that came in and her shirt was inside out. And it made me, okay, something's going on. She later on, started developing, real symptoms of dementia. But yeah, just being screening for, how is your memory, what's going on, and the earlier you get into treatment, the better it is for everybody all around, because you can help the individual, but also you can help the family. You can start getting them into the, into programs, or get them resources, where they can take care of their loved ones. Most people, the majority of people who have, family members with Alzheimer's and dementia, are taking care of themselves, and so they don't know, they don't know what to do. They don't know, what resources they have, and so you can get them
Absolutely.
plugged in. Um, and Diane mentioned that, we're at the point now where, right now, the only way to really diagnose dementia, usually we'll get like a CAT scan or an MRI of someone's brain. But really the only way to know is to biopsy their brain, and no one's gonna do that. So if we can find a genetic marker or something that we could use as a test for screening for it, that would make a world of difference. So again, the research is coming out now. Well, this other thing is interesting about dementia. Heart disease. The incidence of heart disease is actually, people dying from heart disease, is going down. The cancers, most cancers, the life expectancy is going up if you have a cancer, because they have better treatments. Alzheimer's is actually going up, and that's because the population is getting older. And so, since people aren't dying from heart disease as much as they used to, people aren't dying from infections like they did 100 years ago. As people get older, we're seeing more dementia now.
Mm.
And so, as the baby boomers are reaching that age, we're seeing more. This has become more of an issue, and it's more of a drain on our healthcare system, because people who have dementia are more likely to end up in the hospital, more likely to end up in the ER.
Mhm.
And again, not to even mention the families who are spending trillions of dollars taking care of loved ones themselves. If those people end up being on in the system, being in a nursing home or something, it's a lot more expensive taking care of them that way than to try to give the family the resources they need to take care of them at home.
Absolutely. And we're talking major, major dollars. And so when you were asking about the treatment, also, the treatment has to be started early on in the early onset of the disease in order for it to have an effect on the disease. So if we are thinking that this is just a sign of aging and we don't do anything about it, by the time we realize that it's an actual disease, we may be too late to access the treatment. And the treatment, as you mentioned, Karen, it does stave off the disease a little bit longer. So it's not a cure. I pray for the day that we have a cure and that I don't have a job because Alzheimer's doesn't exist anymore, like polio or something. But that's a ways off. But we do have at least now a disease that can stave off we have a treatment that can stave it off and give us a little bit more time with our loved one.
Yeah.
Yes, and the disease really kind of eats at the brain.
Yeah.
It kind of just kind of eats that up a little bit. Dr. Izzard, I wanted you to mention, talk about that just briefly.
It's
And I know we
behavioral.
have another guest and we're going to have to move forward, but I still wanted to people to know, like, what are the challenges with uh, Alzheimer's and why people can't really control it?
Yeah. It's the behavioral things that are hard to deal with, because you start seeing people's personality might change, and there might be subtle changes. A lot of times what happens during the holidays, people come together and all of a sudden they realize mama doesn't look right. That food wasn't quite right. She did, and so they've been getting by, kind of you kind of minimizing their symptoms. And then usually the family comes together and they start realizing, look, she shouldn't be driving anymore. And that's when the things start happening. But often at that point, they're at the point where it's already crisis.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And mama's got to find a place to live. She don't want to move out the house because she owns the house, and
It's a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot when you
Very-
start looking at that because you've given up so much, all the things that you've worked so hard for, and then they have to give them up. That's a really hard thing to do.
Right.
So,
Right.
Diane, can you just kind of let people know what's expected next Tuesday, where they can go and hear Dr. Izzard along with your other guests, and there's going to be other organizations there as well. I think you mentioned about some vaccines, free
Yes,
vaccines. So
Thank
kind of
you.
tell the public, tell the community what's going on for you.
So come to the Alzheimer's Association Black History Month event at St. Mark AME Church. That is on 16th and Atkinson, right on the corner. There is an elevator. The event is in the lower level, but you just come right in off of 16th Street and go to the elevator and come down if you don't feel comfortable with the stairs. County Exec David Crawley is our keynote speaker, and the illustrious Dr. Kevin Izzard,
My favorite doctor.
their favorite doctor, everybody's favorite doctor,
That's right.
is going to speak from the medical perspective. And we have Fatou Sacer from Madison, who is going to come in and speak to us from advocacy. The event is on February 11th. It's Tuesday. It's at 11 a.m. Doors open at 10:30. It's completely free. We would love it if you would register just so that we have the proper food count. The registration number is 800-272-3900. Again, the registration number is 800-272-3900. That number is available 24 hours a day. And it's a 2-hour event. So it's from 11 in the morning until 1:30 in the afternoon. Take a long lunch break. If you think that you might be dealing with this, take a long lunch break. Come and have lunch with us. Come and get the information. Arm yourself. Milwaukee County Department of Aging and Disability Services is one of our sponsors. They will be in the house. You can get information from them. Bader Philanthropies, thank you very much, is one of our sponsors. AARP will be in the house. They're one of our sponsors. Legacy Home Health and Respite is one of our sponsors. Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute and Melanin Minded. They will all be in the house. Come and arm yourself with the information that you need.
And it's free, right?
It is absolutely free.
Great. You know, we're going to take a break. I want to thank Diane Milner for joining us from the Alzheimer's Association. We're going to have, when we return, Colleen McCarthy. She's VP of Diversity, Organ, and Tissue Donations. So we'll see you back on the other side. And this is really good conversation today. Feel free to give us a call if you want to have questions and you want to gather more information. You can call us here on WNOV at 414-444-5253 or 414-444-5250.
The passing of a loved one is emotional enough without adding the stress of funeral arrangements. By pre-planning,
This is Karen Dotson. I want to welcome you back to At the Table this morning with Dr.
We are back in the studio.
Yes.
We have a very special guest. And actually, I'm excited about this. I
Me
remember
too.
when
Me
I was
too.
a resident and I had a patient. Well, it was my patient, but part of what the responsibility of the resident was to pronounce people dead. So anybody died in the hospital, you had to go and pronounce them. And this particular person had died, and so I pronounced him. But I saw that he was donating his corneas. I said, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." So I had nothing else going on, so I sat there and I watched him harvest this guy's corneas, which I thought was very interesting. And so I'm an organ donor myself. Well, I mean, I haven't donated anything, but I'm a potential organ donor. And you do your driver's license. You have that little orange, you say a little orange sticker you put on there. That was kind of a permanent thing on the driver's license. But organ donations is a huge thing. And over the years, I've had patients, who need, in particular, kidneys is a big one. People, African American patients who need kidney transplants, and they have a hard time finding matches for them. And so that's one of the things that always inspired me to make sure that I'm on that donor list. And I got a call Wednesday from one of my fellow church members. She called. She said, "Yeah, my uncle, he's in the hospital. I think he had a stroke. It sounded like he had a hemorrhagic stroke, and he was on a ventilator. And so he ended up passing the next day. But I know people that that oftentimes are brain dead, or they have injuries that they're not going to survive, and you kind of wonder what happens to those organs. And so we have a very special guest here, Colleen McCarthy from Versity, formerly known as the Wisconsin Blood Center, who is going to talk about why it's important that we actually register in that registry for organ donations. Colleen was an old, I don't say old, but she was formerly a level 1 trauma center. I gotta be careful when I use that word.
It's true.
Colleen was formerly a level
Yes.
1 trauma center nurse in Denver, Colorado.
That's right.
Karen, your mic is off.
No, I'm here. I'm here. I just, Colleen, I wanted to thank you for joining us today. And I was looking at, the work that you have done, and you've been so involved in this area for, dedicated over 21 years as far as in this field of organ and tissue donation, and why, and how did your journey take you to this point? Because this is really a very sensitive issue for a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. And I organ and tissue donation is such an incredible gift. And I, as a young nurse over 25-ish years ago, I took care of my very first organ donor at a level 1 trauma center. And in my early 20s, that level 1 trauma center was just, every day was death. Every day was just despair and just traumatic things for families. And so it started to wear on me, being so young and being exposed to just some very sad and traumatic things. But then I took care of my first organ donor, and I remember everything about him. He was only 16 years old. He was in a terrible car accident. He came into that trauma ICU, and it was clear he was not going to survive. And to see that family go from just absolute devastation to clinging to some hope that something good could come out of this tragedy. So that just changed death and dying for me, and how can we, as a healthcare community, rally around these families that are in the worst moments of their life and offer them some peace and comfort through donation. It is just an amazing gift, and I think donor families have just bring out the best in humanity. So I couldn't imagine doing anything else with my nursing career.
Yeah, that's got to be a tough thing, when because you have someone who's a potential donor, and family is trying to hold on to all the hope that they have this person's going to get better.
Yeah.
How do you actually broach that subject of have you considered donating these organs from this person?
You know, our team, our family services team is so specially trained to have empathy and compassion for our families. And we have to, walk alongside these families to make sure that they understand with the hospital team that everything was done to attempt to save their loved one's life. So I think families first need to understand the course of the injury, the efforts that were made to save the life, and families have to just have time to understand and accept that loss. And once families understand that brain death has occurred, at that point we begin to work with the family and talk about organ donation. But the timing is so important. Families just need time to process. They are overwhelmed. They're in an ICU that is they're at their most vulnerable. So having patience and care for these families and to let them grieve in any way they need to grieve, surround them with support. So it's just a lot of sitting with families, caring for them, and meeting their needs the best we can during these very difficult times.
Yeah. One of the things that we encounter as we try to get people to consider being involved with research more is people, especially Black people, are suspicious. They've heard about, hitting their legs, and they've heard about other things, that kind of make them suspicious that you're going to be used. And I imagine organ donation is maybe even more so because there are probably, people might be suspicious that, oh, well, you tell me my loved one's not going to get better because you want to take their organs. So, yeah. So how do you do that in a culturally sensitive way?
Yeah, great question. You're absolutely right, Doctor. Is it all that fear and lack of trust in healthcare impacts organ donation, and we see that, and we hear from families mistrust. Is my loved one really dead? Are these organs going to be sold to the highest bidder? Did you really try to save my loved one? We hear all those things, and it's challenging conversations at the moment in moments of crisis. And so while we have those difficult conversations at the bedside, what we really need to do is have these conversations more proactively and have time for conversations like this to talk about those disparities and those fears, and to reassure and build trust in donation. One of the things that is so important to our program is to better serve and support our communities of color. We recognize there's disparities in donation transplantation, and we have to address that. We have to do something about that. Just a couple months ago, we held our very first Impact Summit, and it was titled "Breaking Barriers to Health Disparities in Organ Donation Transplantation." And we brought together about 130 of our hospitals in our service area and our donation partners from 25 hospitals, and 2 days was just dedicated to that very topic. How do we as a team support families? How do we understand and recognize our own bias in how we care for families? How does how the experience that the family receives from the moment they enter that hospital can impact whether they say yes or no to donation? And so I think it was just an incredible 2-day event where we had a lot of self-reflection on why these fears exist and what system challenges continue to perpetuate those fears. And so it was those type of conversations that we have to have proactively versus at the bedside where families are their most vulnerable.
Carlene, when you mentioned about disparities, give us an example of what do you mean by that?
Oh, you bet. So it really starts from on the donation side of it, not transplant, but starting with donation. We know that there is the lack of the lack of trust and fear in healthcare, and that shows up in organ donation registry rates. It also shows up in authorization rates. So looking at just Milwaukee County, our African American population, there's only about 23% that are registered to be organ donors compared to roughly 50% of Caucasian population. So right there says there's fear and mistrust, and there's a call to action for us to address that. Another example of the disparities, when we look at authorization rates, how many times we talk to a family about donation and how many times they say yes. Our African American and Hispanic authorization rates are typically lower. And again, that's a call to action. That is something that we have to address, because we know but roughly 13% of the population is African American, but 30% are on the national transplant waiting list for a kidney. So the need is there, and the call to action to address that and to build trust is also there, and it's something we have to keep working at.
When I was just looking at the various types of transplants, and I kind of briefly talked with you about this yesterday related to like animal transplants. And can you speak about that and, what's really going on in that area?
Oh, this is so fascinating. There's so much innovation occurring right now in organ donation and transplantation. And the sad reality is that there's just not enough organs available for patients in need. And even if every single family said yes to donation, there would still be patients on the transplant waiting list. And so as a community, there's been some amazing innovation. And one example is xenotransplantation. So just last week, the FDA approved clinical trials to allow genetically modified pig kidneys to be transplanted into humans. And it's just groundbreaking science and innovation that could give so many more patients an opportunity to have a transplant that they otherwise wouldn't receive.
And then also I was reading about this woman. I think she's the longest living person that received a heart from a pig for transplanting, and actually I think she's doing pretty good. Can you speak to that?
Yes. There have been 5 patients that have been transplanted with pig kidneys in the United States. And the woman you're referencing is, I believe she was transplanted around November, and she's still alive. And she's doing wonderful. The other patients that have received transplants from pig kidneys were approved due to a compassionate exception, meaning that they would not have any other chance to survive. And so the FDA allowed the transplant program to transplant those patients. But what is so amazing about this latest transplant is this woman is doing well. She's off dialysis. Her pig kidney is working inside her. And it's really remarkable. And it gives so much more hope to others that are on the transplant waiting list.
Okay, so that was a kidney. I apologize because I said heart. So that was a kidney that actually is functioning and doing well. And then I know that they also use other types of valves and things like that from the pig as well. How is that you could interchange that with humans and animals?
Well, on the organ transplant side, these pigs are genetically modified so that they will not reject. They will not trigger an immune response inside a human, because whenever an organ is transplanted, there's always a chance for rejection. And so patients who are receiving transplants will be on medication for their life to ensure that their organ is not rejected. And so special care has to be taken when for xenotransplantation as well. So these pigs are genetically modified so that they will have less likelihood of rejection, and also not have any pathogens transferred into humans as well. So all this is done under very careful research protocols and oversight to ensure their safety for these type of transplants.
That was very interesting to me. But I want to kind of go back a little bit and talk about what some of the things that you all are doing in the community to really get the community more involved and provide more insight. Because I think that a lot of times people are thinking, like, if I put on my driver's license that I want to donate, my organs, are they going to, just say, oh, we can use her organs. I won't help her. That's, we have about, because it could be 10 or 20 different things that could be transplanted from a person's body, depending on what they, what's available that they have related to their health conditions as well. So speak to that a little bit, Colleen.
Oh, sure. Community outreach and community education is one of our core functions. We have a community outreach team that hosts events and shares information and facts about organ donation. And one of the newer initiatives that we're very proud of is what we call Versity on King. So at the Thrive On location, our organization, Versity Blood Center of Wisconsin, also opened up a blood donor center in that location. And the reason behind that was really because of sickle cell disease. Sickle cell patients need frequent blood transfusions in order to manage that very difficult disease. And we know when we collect blood from diverse communities, that will help patients with sickle cell disease. And so we wanted to have a presence in the community. We also hired a community health navigator that works out of Versity on King, just to help the community find healthcare resources, housing, food, transportation. So we want to be able to have a presence and give back to the community. But we're using that location as an opportunity for a platform for education. And we share information about organ donation. We partner with our transplant centers to talk about how to access transplant, how to get listed for a transplant. And so that partnership and that very special location gives us the chance to have visibility about the need for organ donation and also blood donation.
You know, when you talk about getting on the transplant waiting list, what does that process look like, and how are people screened to make sure that they're eligible to be on this list?
Oh, great question. And so it really starts with a referral to a transplant program. So for example, if a patient has end-stage kidney disease, they are on dialysis, and that is it's a very difficult existence. Those dialysis patients may need to have 3 to 4 to 5 days a week for many hours at a time sitting in a dialysis chair. And that is just exhausting and very difficult. But it starts with a referral. So when kidney failure is identified, there should be a referral to a transplant program. And, Karen, you asked about disparities earlier. On the transplant side, another disparity is that based on a paper done by the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine in 2022, it showed that Black patients are less likely to be referred preemptively for a transplant compared to white patients. So right there is another disparity. So in order to be considered for a transplant, there needs to be a referral made. And so patients can advocate for themselves to talk to their nephrologist or their doctor if they have organ failure, to get a referral. I think that's the very most important step, is advocate for yourself to get that referral to be evaluated.
I think that's really key, because sometimes people aren't aware that I can get on this list. And sometimes the provider doesn't tell them that. And maybe it just be that that provider is just not maybe that knowledgeable about it. So I don't want to say that they're just trying to not, tell Black folks about it, but maybe that provider isn't as knowledgeable. And so that's why we want to bring this to the community, because we want people to advocate for themselves as well, to know that they have an opportunity to be on the list, and that, there's hope still there for them, and they don't have to feel like, this is it, and they don't have an opportunity. And how does that work? The sooner that you're on the list, then that means that the sooner that you possibly can be treated, because it goes down the list. Is that the way it goes, Colleen?
Basically, once a patient receives a referral to a transplant program, they need to go through all the pre-transplant evaluations, the medical evaluations, to make sure a patient is healthy enough to survive a transplant, and that it is believed that the transplant will add years to their life and quality to their life. So they go through a very careful medical evaluation to make sure that they are safe to receive a transplant. Once they're
Yeah. And then, Colleen, I have a question, because I know that sometimes, like, you might have a family member, but you're not a match, but they do want to donate, like, their kidney to someone else, and then there might be a match for them somewhere else. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, that's another wonderful option. So when a patient needs a kidney, one of the first questions they may be asked is, do you have a potential living donor? Do you have a family member, a friend that could be a match for you? And so sometimes these family members step up and say, I want to be a donor. But after all the testing, they see they're not compatible for whatever reason. Could be a blood type mismatch. But that family member could donate to somebody else that's a match, and that's called a daisy chain. So if you're not a match for your recipient, you could donate to another recipient who has a different living donor that could donate to somebody else. And it's just really amazing gift that gives the option for transplant that patients wouldn't normally have if they have incompatibilities.
So that allows for that person to be bumped up on the list then.
It allows them to receive a transplant much quicker than they would if they were waiting on the transplant list for a deceased donor.
Already close to the end, so we just close it out.
Okay, Colleen, we've been having some technical difficulties today, but I wanted to thank you. But I wanted to ask you, what would you like for the community to know about Versity and what you bring to the community and how they can get in touch with you?
I would ask for the community support in bringing awareness to organ donation transplantation. We have too many patients that are sitting on dialysis, suffering from end-stage kidney disease, and the only hope for them is a transplant. So I would ask the community to please consider organ donation. Think about what that legacy would mean for you, for your family. Consider registering to be an organ donor. You can register at donatelifewisconsin.org, and please come visit us at Versity on King. Donate blood. Come and talk to us about organ donation.
Is there a number that people can call? Because I'm looking at some people wanted to know a little bit more about the health issues, concerns, and medications. So if they have questions that they want to get a quick answer from, or it might not be as quick, what number can they call?
Pulling it up right now.
Okay.
The number to our office is 414-937-6999, and we would be happy to answer any questions from the community, to get you in touch with transplant centers as well if you have questions. But we are here to spread the word and awareness for organ donation.
Yeah, we want to thank everybody for having Colleen McCarthy at the table this morning. We had a couple issues. The power went out yesterday, and so there were some issues there at our station, but we have still made it through. I also wanted to thank you, Colleen, for joining us, and please consider, doing something. If you have loved ones, give a call and let them know. So I want to thank you, Colleen. I also wanted to thank Diane Milner with Alzheimer's Association. They're having an event at St. Mark's next Tuesday. You can also go there and be involved. It starts at 11 o'clock. And we want to just say thank you for joining us at the table today. We had some great conversation related to research, related to organ tissue donation and Alzheimer's. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Have a good rest of your day.